Imagine being told that a few minutes from now, you could stand before a threshold capable of reshaping the entire direction of your life, delivering you to the very dream that has always felt just out of reach. No years of daily meditation are required. No walls plastered with affirmations, no elaborate rituals, no waiting on signs from the sky. All that's asked of you is a single quiet act, one already written into the deepest layers of who you are, whether or not you've ever noticed it. This isn't a fable. It's presented here as a blend of psychological insight and old wisdom, something that has echoed through generations and is often traced back to Carl Gustav Jung, one of the towering figures of modern psychology. Jung is remembered here not merely as a clinician, but as something closer to an explorer of the inner world, someone who spent his life searching for the meaning hidden beneath ordinary experience. At the center of his outlook sits a bold claim: reality isn't simply a string of outside events happening to you regardless of who you are. During his years of reflection at his tower retreat by Lake Zurich, he arrived at an idea that unsettles most conventional thinking: that your desires may already exist on some inner, psychic level before they ever appear in the physical world. What's missing, in this view, isn't the desire itself, but your alignment with the state of mind in which that desire feels already true. The invitation, then, is to test this claim personally. Give the next few minutes your full attention. Follow the method that's about to be described, and see for yourself whether something shifts. There's an old line often attributed to Jung that captures the stakes. What remains unconscious will continue to steer your life, and you'll experience it only as fate, never realizing you had a hand in it. The premise offered here is that most people don't fail to get what they want because luck skipped them or because they didn't try hard enough. The block is described as something quieter and more internal, a habit of perceiving the desired thing as external, distant, something to be earned only through struggle. Underneath that effort often sits a small, persistent voice whispering that maybe someday, if enough is sacrificed, it will finally arrive. The reframe being proposed is this: the very act of viewing your desire as far away is what keeps it far away. Rather than chasing a goal from a position of lack, the suggestion is to inhabit, right now, the emotional reality of already possessing what you want. Not waiting for external change to produce internal happiness, but generating the internal feeling first and observing what happens to your circumstances as a result. This isn't framed as simple positive thinking. It's described as something closer to an inner discipline, the idea that your emotional and energetic baseline shapes what you perceive as your outer world. And the paradox at its core is stark. Continuing to feel like you lack something, according to this framework, is what perpetuates the lack. The world, in this telling, doesn't respond to requests. It responds to your state of being, which raises the obvious question: how do you convincingly feel something your rational mind insists isn't real yet? That puzzle is where the next part of this practice begins. The proposed answer to that puzzle lies in a concept sometimes called psychic reality. The notion that inner imagery and feeling carry more weight in shaping your life than the external facts you can currently observe. Everything showing up in your life today, in this framework, is treated as the residue of your past emotional and mental states. What you feel today is treated as the seed of tomorrow. Change the inner feeling, the argument goes, and you begin to change what eventually appears outwardly, because the origin point of your future is described as internal, not external. Imagination, in this account, isn't dismissed as childish fantasy. It's treated as an active tool available at every waking moment. But there's a key nuance. The practice isn't to watch a mental movie from a distance, like a spectator in a theater seat. You're asked to step fully inside the imagined scene, to feel it through your body, your senses, your full physical presence, rather than observing it intellectually from the outside. Consider someone who wants to be free of financial strain or to find lasting love. If, through the ordinary hours of the day, that person keeps rehearsing the feeling of debt or loneliness, the argument here is that this is effectively the signal being broadcast and absorbed by the subconscious. More of the same debt, more of the same isolation, each experience reinforcing the story already being told. But if that person can access, right now, the felt sense of being unburdened, loved, and whole. The claim is that physiology itself begins to shift. Posture, behavior, tone, the way circumstances are met and interpreted. And as the person changes, the world reflecting back to them is said to change too. Not because the world is granting wishes, but because it's mirroring identity rather than desire. This is framed as a consistent, almost mechanical law, as dependable, in this telling, as gravity. And it comes with an important caveat about authenticity. If you tell yourself you're merely pretending to be secure or loved, the claim is that you'll simply remain a person who is pretending. The practice only works, according to this framework, when the feeling is genuinely inhabited rather than performed, described here as vibrational work rather than a mental trick. The idea attributed to Jung in this context is that the feeling of a wish already fulfilled functions as the entry point through which that wish becomes real. In other words, stop wanting and start being the version of yourself that already has it. None of this is presented as effortless. The mind, used to its familiar loops of worry, will resist at first. But with repeated practice, the claim is that this new inner orientation becomes second nature. And all of it is anchored in one deceptively small practice, roughly 4 minutes long, which unfolds in the next section. The first movement of the practice is simply withdrawal. Find a space where no one can interrupt. A closed bedroom door, a park bench under a tree, even the inside of a parked car. The setting doesn't need to be special. What matters is genuine solitude, even briefly. Settle into a position that's upright but relaxed, not rigid. Take 3 unhurried, deliberate breaths. With each exhale, imagine releasing the accumulated weight of the day. Stress, other people's expectations, old regrets, anxieties about what's ahead. Let the noise of the external world fade. Let the pressure of time loosen its grip, and allow yourself to settle into stillness. That drowsy, half-lit territory between full wakefulness and sleep, where the mind's usual resistance tends to soften. With eyes closed, the practice poses a central question, one often linked to Jung's work. If your desire were already fulfilled right now, in this exact moment, what would you feel? The instruction is not to rush toward a tidy, logical answer. Instead, let the body respond. Not with words, but with a felt quality, a state of being. Take the earlier example of financial pressure. Imagine receiving confirmation that every debt has been cleared, that there's more than enough. What lightness would open in your chest? How would your breath change once that invisible weight lifts? Maybe it's joy. Maybe it's a deep exhale of relief after years of quiet strain. The instruction is to let that sensation spread through the body, through the chest, into the limbs, like warmth moving through the bloodstream. From there, the practice asks you to build one small, vivid, concrete scene that gives the feeling shape. Perhaps you're holding paperwork confirming a debt is settled. Perhaps you're laughing on the balcony of a new home with someone you love. If the desire is companionship, picture an evening scene. Holding someone's hand, feeling its warmth, meeting their eyes without fear or hesitation, only a sense of being fully known and fully accepted. If the desire is creative recognition, picture the moment of seeing your work on a shelf or hearing applause from people genuinely moved by what you made. The essential instruction repeated throughout is this: don't observe the scene as an outsider. Be inside it. Feel the texture of what surrounds you, the air, the sounds, full sensory immersion rather than passive visualization. This is described as active inhabitation of a reality being called into being, not a detached mental exercise. That's the first phase complete: the retreat, the question, and the construction of a felt scene. The next part covers what to do with that feeling once it's been found. Once the feeling has been located, the second phase begins, staying with it. The instruction is to remain inside that emotional state for roughly 3 uninterrupted minutes, without stopping to analyze whether it's working or picking the experience apart. Instead, an inward phrase is repeated with sincerity. Something like, "This has already happened. This is already mine. I am living inside this reality right now. Crucially, the feeling isn't supposed to be forced or manufactured. The claim here is that it isn't the analytical mind that produces change, but the body's unforced, organic response to something that feels genuinely true. According to this framework, timing and mechanism, when and how the desire eventually shows up, aren't the practitioner's responsibility. If the feeling has been genuinely accessed internally, it's treated as already created on an invisible level, destined eventually to surface externally. The metaphor offered is a planted seed. Once it's in the ground, the growing is left to nature, and the only job left is trust. This is where the practice pivots toward a warning about common mistakes. People encountering ideas like this for the first time, it's suggested, tend to overcomplicate them almost immediately, searching for the right phrase to repeat, the correct hour of the day, special props or directions to face. But the deeper problem, in this account, is the underlying urge to control the outcome. The instruction is simpler than that impulse suggests. Inhabit the feeling as though the desire is already yours, and let the body, not the calculating mind, lead the process. Genuine visualization, in this telling, isn't about forcing a crisp mental picture behind closed eyes. It's about living inside an impression with your whole being, rather than constructing it piece by piece from outside. The clarity of the image matters far less than the depth of belief and the honesty of the feeling behind it. Letting go of the compulsion to analyze, compare, or anxiously time the outcome is framed as the very thing that opens the door to whatever larger creative process the practice is trying to access. One particularly emphasized window for this work is the period right before sleep. Those final minutes as the mind eases from a fast, analytical state into a slower, more receptive one. In that transitional window, described here in terms of shifting brainwave states, the usual critical, doubting voice is said to quiet down, making it easier to reach the deeper layers of belief and pattern that shape day-to-day life. There's no need for an elaborate scenario in this state. A single vivid moment is treated as sufficient. The instant of receiving good news, hearing words of love, or simply resting in a wordless sense that the struggle is over and something has finally arrived. The core instruction distilled from all of this: don't try to manufacture something that doesn't yet exist. Instead, shift into the felt sense that it already does. And critically, the practice cautions against immediately undoing this work each morning by spiraling back into worry, complaints, or discouraging input the moment your eyes open. Beyond the felt visualization itself, the practice places heavy emphasis on gratitude as an amplifier. Rather than simply picturing the outcome, the suggestion is to give thanks as though it has already arrived. An inward, thank you for this that is already part of my life, paired with a physical sense of relaxing further, letting the last traces of resistance dissolve. Gratitude is framed here as one of the highest available emotional states, one that structurally can't coexist with fear or a sense of lack. And when that fear dissolves, the practice claims, the energetic tone shifts from pleading to receiving, from asking the world for something to acknowledging that it's already been given. From there, the material turns to a less commonly discussed idea: the importance of not announcing your goals to others before they've solidified. This is framed as a kind of energetic containment, the idea being that broadcasting an intention too early leaks the very drive needed to bring it into being. Telling people about a plan, especially people who might doubt it, is described as exposing a fragile, newly forming idea to outside skepticism before it's strong enough to withstand it, much like disturbing a seed before it has had the chance to take root. Framed this way, silence isn't about secrecy for its own sake. It's described as an act of self-trust. Needing to announce a goal for validation is treated as a signal that your own belief in it isn't yet strong enough to stand on its own. The material also brings in a psychological observation to support this. When people share a goal and receive praise for it, the brain can release a burst of reward chemistry similar to what accompanies actually achieving something. The concern raised here is that this premature reward can quietly sap the motivation needed to do the underlying work, leaving the goal articulated but never realized. The recommendation that follows is to keep intentions private until they're ready to be visible through results rather than words. Moving into action when inspiration strikes, but protecting the underlying intention the way you might protect anything genuinely valuable. Nobody, in this framing, is owed a progress report on what you're privately building. The material closes with what it calls the most transformative piece, beginning from the end. Rather than treating the desire as something to be achieved eventually, the instruction is to act, think, and feel from the position of it already being complete. Not hopeful anticipation, but present tense embodiment. Instead of asking for something, the shift is toward expressing thanks for something already received. This is framed not as self-delusion, but as consciously aligning with a version of events in which the outcome has already happened. The underlying claim is that the subconscious mind doesn't clearly separate objective fact from something vividly and emotionally imagined. It responds to feeling and sensory detail more than to literal truth. If you can genuinely carry the sense that everything is already resolved, the argument goes, your circumstances are drawn to reorganize around that inner conviction. The material invites you to imagine concrete physical changes, how your face might soften, how your voice might settle into a calmer register, how your shoulders might drop, how your breath might slow. These small physical shifts are treated as more than cosmetic. They're described as the actual signals being broadcast outward, the tangible expression of an inner state of certainty and completion. Concrete applications follow. Wanting love means practicing the felt sense of already being valued and accepted. Wanting financial ease means practicing the quiet confidence of someone whose relationship with money is already settled. Wanting healing means imagining vitality in the body before physical recovery is complete. The through line is that you're not walking toward the goal. You're already standing inside it, looking backward from a place of having rather than forward from a place of lacking. The practice frames sudden, hard-to-explain turnarounds as evidence of this principle in action. Moments where someone stops gripping, stops forcing, and simply settles into the felt reality of already having received what they sought. In that state of release, the material suggests things tend to arrive more naturally, without the friction of desperate pursuit. The overall practice is summarized as a nightly ritual. Find quiet, breathe deliberately, release the noise of the day, and imagine, from within, not from a distance, the desired outcome is already real. Feel it physically before trying to reason through it mentally, and close with a simple, sincere inward thank you, offered not as a request, but as an acknowledgement that the circle is already closed. The final distinction drawn is between a life spent waiting for change to arrive from outside and one spent actively generating that change from within. One deliberate 4-minute session, one genuine feeling of completion at a time.